Hi, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode number 20, Rebalancing the Masculine and Feminine. I'm Katherine Bird. I'm here with my beautiful shaman sister, Michelle Hawk, and we together are the Shaman Sisters, and we are here to discuss all kinds of topics throughout the realms of shamanism, healing, mediumship, living the shamanic life, working as a healer, everything that can come up, anything in between all of those aspects. And we're really excited to be here with you today to talk about the masculine and the feminine and its relationship in our lives and in our clients and in the collective as we see it. So welcome.
And Kat, I'm wondering is my connection seeming a little off to you, or
a little off.
You were crackling out a little.
Yeah, I'm gonna close a few more things.
Okay. Well, so to just to catch you up, before we started recording, we were drawing some cards, and we each drew one from the Goddess deck, the Susan Saddam Boulay Goddesses deck, and I feel like the first one. Yeah, okay. I guess, yeah, we have the multiple faces of the feminine here. We have Tlazal Teodol joining us here, who is the Toltec Earth Mother. She works profoundly she's the eater of impurities. So she works with forgiveness, the deep, dark forgiveness work. These things that might feel unforgivable, nothing is unforgivable for her. She will help you dive into your darkness or dive into the darkness and find absolution. We also have Cultivating here depicted as the hare, who is a different face of the goddess, the divine feminine. She's a lunar deity, very much more nurturing feeling and compassionate feeling. So we have a couple of faces of the goddess here, both super powerful, super magical in their different ways. And I also drew a card from my Shaman Oracle deck. I don't have specifically a divine masculine deck, but this one feels fairly masculine to me when I tune into it. So we have the Ancestor of Tribes, who is also depicted as a hare, incidentally. So that hare medicine seems to be coming up today. Ancestor of Tribes indicates to us to find our community, find our peer groups, and understand that we are supported in those. We are not alone, and it is a time to come together, come in support of each other. And in regards to hare, since hare showed up a couple of times, hare and rabbit medicine is very community oriented, very connected with the earth, super sensitive animals. So it's interesting that it came up twice. In looking at how can we live collaboratively together in community in a supportive way that is responsive to vibrations in the earth, responsive to the balance of masculine and feminine within the community, responsive to all sorts of fluctuations in the environment. So let's sit with those today.
That's perfect, Michelle. Perfect medicine to come through.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about rebalancing the divine masculine and feminine, and this is a very both important and like timely topic. We hear about it a lot. We are seeing a lot of information coming through and discussions happening around masculine and feminine energies, around gender stuff, around how the balance of power is playing out at this moment, and so it's very important for us to be looking at the masculine and the feminine within ourselves, within our relationships, and within our community. And it is an important piece to the expansion of consciousness and the shift, the evolution of the planet, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's delve into these archetypes a little bit. Before we are speaking about archetypes, when we talk about the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and we're speaking about the internal masculine and feminine, we're talking about archetypes. So these are the, first of all, when working with an archetype, there are many reflections of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that, the many faces of the goddess. Like that came up once already today. Here you have goddess of the the eater of impurities and the kind of the rough way through forgiveness. And then you have a very nurturing lunar goddess. They're both part of the divine feminine. These archetypes are multifaceted, multidimensional aspects. The divine masculine and feminine is the original split from oneness. It is that yin and yang, the perfect harmony and the balance, these feminine qualities and energies attributed to the goddess, to the divine feminine, whatever you would like to call her, and the masculine yang energies attributed to himself, the sacred masculine. So let's delve a little bit into each of those archetypes. Kat, I know you do a lot of work with masculine, especially. You're a men's coach, among other things. Would you like to explore that with us a little bit?
Sure. So I think it's fascinating. I've been coaching men for the last about four years or so, and was really called into that work. And what I am seeing with men is that there is this really beautiful blossoming in the men, that they are seeking to understand themselves to a greater degree, seeking to understand both their own masculinity and their own femininity. And it's definitely not an easy task, for sure. And to be able to support them through that process of really understanding self, I'm really honored to do so. And when we're looking at a masculine energy, like the masculine energy is the pushing through, it is the penetrative, it is the creation, the building, the structure, making things happen, this kind of fiery energy that takes over and builds really tall buildings and creates things. And what we have seen is that there's been a very strong masculine energy on the planet that's just been kind of taking over everything and being in control of everything. And as we are seeing a shift of a rebalancing, going back into a state of balance. Some people talk a lot about how the feminine is rising and sort of like the feminine is going to take over, but I believe it is more about us balancing within ourselves and within each other, these two energetics, just as you explain that yin and yang, like the circle and the two parts. If one of those parts was taking up more of the circle, it would be completely imbalanced. And so how do we get back to this place of balance within ourselves and then within society? And I see men that are really seeking to do this. And it's not just about learning about their masculine that they're doing this work. It's actually learning about their feminine aspects and healing those feminine wounds, the feminine wounds of being shamed by women, the feminine wounds of not feeling good enough, the feminine wounds of being called, a girl, a pussy, weak. All of the things that men in our society have had to deal with. Men have been taught not to be expressive of their emotions, not to even be able to feel their emotions. And they're learning how to feel their emotions. They're learning how to connect to their feminine nature, to express emotions in a healthy way, and to be in more of a balanced state. And we're working on it. We're definitely working on it. So a lot of times I hear from women, or we see, writings on Facebook or everything, like, why can't men do this? And why can't men show up? And why, da, 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 da. And, I have so much compassion for the men of the world, what they've actually had to live through, that what it takes to come back into alignment with really who they are as a human being. And they really are doing the work. And so I always say to women, like, they're really doing the work, they're really trying, and it is part of our job to really hold that space for them. And to give them a chance to move through all this stuff, because it's heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything that we're speaking about today, let this so we're speaking about men, we're speaking about women, we're speaking about masculine, we're speaking about feminine. Everyone has both of these aspects. So I know, Kat, for example, you and I would say we both run our masculine energy fairly strongly. We're women and we have a lot of masculine energy and we run them in balance. And so, yes, we have our internal masculine, our internal feminine. Same with men. Men have their internal masculine, their internal feminine. So yes, we're speaking about men and women, but please know that, we're looking at big picture stuff, zooming out a little bit. I do a lot of work in the divine feminine lineage. I do work with men. I have several male clients, and many of the men who find me are looking to balance with their inner feminine. And it's interesting. I don't really have men come to me helping to run their masculine energy, and we end up working on it anyway because they're deeply interrelated. What I've seen, and perhaps you can relate to this too, and perhaps some of our viewers who I know are practitioners can relate to this, is the men who come to me to balance with their divine feminine, their masculine is unbalanced as well. So it's really impossible. What I found is it's impossible to have someone who is healthy, grounded in their masculine in the light, and not be grounded in the feminine. You have to have both. And I would say the same goes for women. I can't think of any women who I know who are super grounded in the healthy expression of their divine feminine who haven't also come into healthy grounding of their divine masculine. They really go together, and it is pretty much impossible to develop one without developing the other. So we work on them cohesively because they support each other. Like you were saying, Kat, with the yin and yang, if one is overdeveloped, and the other is underdeveloped, the whole thing is out of balance and they end up pushing each other farther into polarity. So by developing both, by working on both, that's how we come into the balance.
Absolutely. And, also, like, I work with men. I do a lot of like warrior. I have a very strong warrior archetypal energy within me. So I do a lot of warrior work, both with my men and with my women, of being able to really hold that energy of the warrior who is stable and strong and standing and withstanding the force of the gales of the winds and the rain. But also then there's always that need to bring in the flow and the movement and the femininity to continuously rebalance the system, for sure.
Yeah. And you spoke a little bit about the masculine archetype. I'll fill in a little bit on the feminine side. The feminine aspect of yin, the goddess energy, is the allowing. It is the receiving. It is the going within to the womb space, the internal awareness. I did a channeling event a couple of years ago now, actually, about this very topic, the rebalancing the masculine and feminine, and received some very interesting information. One component of which is about the fundamental teaching of the yin school being internal awareness. So the fundamental teaching of feminine energy is internal awareness, and the fundamental teaching of the yang school is external awareness. So it is the feminine parts of ourselves that pay attention to what is going on inside. I am is inherently a feminine affirmation because it's who am I, what's going on inside of me. And then we couple that with the yang awareness of, okay, now what's going on outside of me? And one is not actionable in the world without the other. When we have all of our attention devoted to our yang energy, as we do in our education system, we're taught to pay attention to everything outside of ourselves. Growing up, we're taught to pay attention like, oh, don't ask how you're feeling, ask how everyone else is feeling. Look outside first. We have the overdeveloped yang awareness, and we have no idea who we are. We have no idea what's going on in our systems or our energy bodies. So anything we do outside of ourselves isn't actually actionable or sustainable. Conversely, when we have the overdeveloped yin, we have the, okay, I know who I am, but we're not paying attention to anything outside of ourselves. We can't do anything in the world. So you see how they're necessary and they serve each other. And the yang awareness, the external awareness, supports the ability of the yin to become actionable outside. Does that make sense?
Right. And
Mm.
we see this in our society, just like you said in school, like we're really taught to, pull all the energy out of the body, put it all in the head, and to be really externally focused. And then it's like, what are you doing? What are you creating? Where are you going? Not a lot of time for rest, not a lot of time for, no, sorry, I'm so sorry. Not a lot of time for, relaxation, contemplation, quietness, being still. And it's just not supported. It's not seen as valuable. And then we see out in the world so many people out there just making and creating and doing without any internal awareness
Mm-hmm.
to why they're doing it. It's just like, oh well, let me just build these buildings and let me build this thing and let me like dig through the earth and like create all this stuff, because I need something external. I need money, I need recognition, I need power,
Mm-hmm.
instead of spending any time on the internal self and receiving recognition and power from inside.
Yeah. The qualities that we are encouraged to cultivate from a very young age, those qualities that are deemed valuable or financially viable or worth the time and energy by society, most often are masculine qualities. Think about in school, the types of intelligence that are valued and encouraged in school are memorizational awareness, statistical and mathematical awareness, logic, precision. Those are all masculine qualities. Emotional and energetic intelligence aren't really encouraged in school. So from a very young age, we are generally pushed into the masculine hemisphere here, the left brain stuff. And those of us who feel inherently that disequilibrium within us, there's this suffering of, but I need my own space. I was a super quiet kid. I love to read and hang out with animals, right? And thankfully, I went to a school where that was a little bit more okay for me to do that. I didn't go to public school until I was a teenager. And by that point, I had developed enough of my inner space that I could still hold that for myself. But so many children, and then as soon as we go into the workplace, again, if you have a traditional job, you are probably cornered into a masculine, like a shadow masculine place most of the time, where again, the shadow masculine isn't balanced with the feminine. The shadow masculine is overly penetrative, overly analytical, running this side of the brain all the time and not allowed to be in allowing space, restful space, going into the darkness. We live in a society that thrives on forcing people to overdo themselves, forcing people into adrenal fatigue, forcing people into sickness, forcing people into not knowing who they are. Because as soon as somebody wakes up and comes into their awareness, their feminine quality awareness of internal recognition of who they are, they don't want to play in society anymore. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And we're not, I definitely don't want us to sound like we're bagging on the masculine in
No.
any kind of way. That the masculine is so important. It gives us a direction. It gives us a creation. It pushes us at manifestation out into the world. It's really important. We're just very much saying that without that internal awareness, the quiet, the sitting, the receiving, that it's imbalanced, and it might not be connected to real truth, to real soul truth and reason for being.
Yeah. We love masculine energy. Conversely, feminine without the appropriate balance of masculine energy doesn't get anything done. It's the sit and do nothing, and the navel gazing of dive inside, spend all the time in isolation, go into the darkness, go into the emotional space. So we absolutely need both. All of us need both.
Mm-hmm. And we're being called into this rebalancing. I know I was in a ceremony this weekend, and a lot of times in this medicine work, something that since from the beginning of the work, that I receive a lot of reminders of allow yourself to receive. Allow yourself to receive healing. I spend a lot of time working on others and doing healing work and paying attention to others, which is actually, in some way, it's very masculine what I'm doing. I'm out there doing, making sure everyone's okay, working on other people. And I'm continuously reminded, let yourself receive healing. Let yourself be nurtured. Let yourself receive whatever it is that you need to receive, even if it's just like putting a blanket over me, like I need to receive this. And it's always reminding me, and I think especially as healers, we have a lot of healers on this program, that we are needing to be conscious of the receiving aspect of energy, of the work, that we cannot give from an empty cup, and that we need to be allowing ourselves to receive, which is a really important piece of coming from a place of balance as a healer.
Yeah. And the more balanced we can be internally, the more we can support people in cultivating that in themselves.
And even in the scope, I just want to mention really quick, even in the scope of healing work, of a session, there is this constant dance and play of doing, of touching and poking and opening and doing, and also this like pulling back and receiving and allowing information to flow through, allowing energy to flow through. And it is this constant dance. I know it's one that I've been fascinated in playing with over the years, and seeing as a healer that when we're really balanced in those two, the work is so effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you create space for both, which is really, again, what we need to be doing. That's the whole point of our talk here. We spoke a little bit about society and how we're seeing some manifestations of this imbalance in today's world. But let's zoom back to look through history a little bit. Then, there were a lot more goddess-oriented civilizations and groups of people thousands and thousands of years ago, particularly the agrarian societies. Think about where our association of the feminine is very earth-based, right? So the goddess, Mother Gaia, the creation, the aspect of you plant a seed in the ground, in the womb space of the earth, and then it grows. That's a very feminine concept. And then we have the masculine corresponding in the sky that offers rain down, the sky that is the father overlooking and holds the space for the earth. The agrarian societies in particular were very feminine oriented for that respect that I just mentioned. Is okay, so we plant the seed and then it germinates and it is birthed, and then we receive food. So with those, there was a very direct relationship to, I have my spiritual experience connecting directly with Earth Mother. There was no intermediary. It was a very personal relationship. People would have ceremonies with the earth, give offerings to the earth, make sacrifices to the earth, and worship of the goddess. In the hunter-gatherer tribes, in the hunter-gatherer communities, it was a much more masculine oriented vibe. So they were going out and getting food rather than cultivating and creating and allowing with the growing season and moving with the rhythms. It was the very masculine concept of, I'm going to ride out and kill this thing and eat it, which is a very masculine vibe. So they were, in general, worshiping masculine deities and calling in the masculine energy. And with the arrows and the spears, again, very masculine, penetrative symbols. We saw that in a lot of the nomadic tribes also, where it wasn't as much about the cultivation and the grounding of the earth mother. It was the go out and find it and be moving around, be mobile. Was much more of the masculine vibe. So that was, thousands and thousands of years ago, general picture of what was happening back then.
Yes, and as we saw a takeover by the church, by Christianity, by the Romans and the empire, and we really saw a a very extreme representation of masculine force and energy, just pillaging and killing entire populations of people who were these more, the druids and the people who were living in the forests, and the women who were, the witch burnings, and all of these situations where the people who were having this more intimate personal connection with nature were just slaughtered and killed off. We see that in America here with the destruction and genocide of the native peoples of this land, and the kind of takeover of this masculine kind of, we're going to do whatever we want, even at the expense of the earth and of the women and the children, and we're just going to kill you guys, so get over it.
And again, to clarify, when we're speaking about this aspect of the masculine, this is the shadow masculine. This is the masculine imbalanced. This is all the icky stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's almost as though we really needed this imbalance of masculine energy. We needed it to be like this. We needed it to get to this place where it is the way that it has been. And over time, it has been shifting. And we are seeing a very serious shift in energy. I mean, even in just the last 100 years, the difference in what women are allowed to do, the rights that we have, not in all places, but at least in Western society, has expanded so much. And there is more of a call for more and more people to protect and care for our resources and our earth, and a call back to some of these ancient lineages and ways of being in alignment with the earth. And these things were actually foretold in many cultures. There were many cultures who, the Mayans, the people of India, spoke of these cycles that the earth was moving through as the earth was moving through the Milky Way and the galaxy. And so as we're moving through these cycles of power, we're having a rise and fall of certain frequencies. And it's been this frequency of masculine energy that was really strong. And now we're sort of rising again into this frequency of more feminine energy. And the piece that we're all looking forward to is this really more balanced flow of energy, where that masculine and feminine is in a space of being able to really respect and love each other and support each other and do what's right for people and planet.
Yeah. There was a quote I heard from the Dalai Lama, and I can't find the original quote, or I can't find the original where it was published, but he said basically that the spiritual renewal of the world would be birthed from the women in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And look at, Kat, you until recently lived in Portland, and I currently live in Portland. So, and you look at Portland, it's a matriarchy. It absolutely is. The conscious community is a very women-dominated, feminine-dominated community who are birthing this, again, channeling the feminine into being. So where are we going with this as a society? You referenced we're working on the coming into balance. We're working on how do we have the healthy, grounded representation of both the feminine and the masculine within all of us individually, and thus in a society. We're absolutely not there yet. There's a lot of work to be done, but it is coming more and more into common awareness. I would say this is something that is slowly proliferating out from the conscious community, from the healer types, from those who have come into awareness and awakening. And it has all sorts of means of expression. So eco-spirituality is one representation of what I would call feminine-based spirituality. Work and environmentalism. Again, returning to honoring the earth, and even though it's with the oh yeah, we gotta save the planet, that's still a feminine-based concept. It has all these manifestations. It's very slowly working its way back into awareness of the planetary community as a whole.
Permaculture.
Mm-hmm.
all the principles of permaculture, whether through the land, through growing and cultivating food in a way that is really easeful for the land, and helpful for plants, helpful for the animals and the insects and all of those things. And then also those permaculture principles in community building, conscious communities that are, supporting each other and living really sustainably is on the rise for sure all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Niche specialization among that, rather than, the agricultural equivalent is a monocrop, which is a very masculine thing of this is the only thing, right?
Wow, it's in a bunch of rows and we're going to use a machine and we're just going to like dig into the earth and then we're going to put chemicals on it. And
yeah, which is a very masculine means of agriculture. And, again, you look at that reflected in society. Oh, this is the one job that everybody has. And like, this is the one standard, and everybody's either a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, again, masculine. This is the one way. The feminine approach is diversification, planting multiple crops together, which actually most plants grow better when they're in grounded, diverse ecosystems. And cacao only grows with other plants. For example, cacao is like, the mother goddess plant right there, like the super feminine fruit of Gaia. She only grows in the company of other plants in a diverse ecosystem. And the feminine reflection of that in society is we support each other in our differences. Not everyone has to do everything. We're allowed to be in collaborative partnerships with each other and allow each other to flower in our true joy and our true purpose.
And I think also with that, in the realms of just plants, talking about cacao and we go maca and all these superfoods that we're seeing on the market, in the conscious community, we're definitely ingesting just massive amounts of superfoods. But, that is filtering into the mainstream. The high amounts of vegetarianism and veganism and care about animal rights is also a very feminine, nurturing expression. And then also talking about ayahuasca and other entheogenic plant medicines that are coming out of their sacred homes where they've been hidden for so long and just spreading across the planet, which is the Aya's very, very feminine grandmother plant who brings you into your heart and really calls you into sitting and just sitting for hours and hours and hours and singing and dancing and being in this feminine space and learning about yourself really deeply. Our meditative practices, these pieces that are giving us a higher level of consciousness to be able to understand ourselves and the planet and the cosmos more clearly.
Mm-hmm. As we develop all of this, so we're speaking about all the ways in which the feminine, the divine feminine, is making her way back into the popular awareness of society. Collectively, as we cultivate our healthy, grounded expression of our divine feminine, we offer healing to the healthy expression of our internal divine masculine. Remember, you can't have one without the other. So yes, we absolutely need to work on, and I feel like men have, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I feel as though a lot of men I know have a uniquely challenging time with this simply because there is so much emphasis on the feminine. Right now, I can think of, quite honestly, and this sounds kind of horrible, I can think of a handful of men who I know personally who are really grounded in their healthy expression of their divine masculine. Mm-hmm. A handful. And part of that is because there are not many role models. There are not many men out there who are grounded in the healthy expression of their masculine in a safe way that honors their inner feminine as well. Because if they're grounded in their healthy masculine, they have to be grounded in their healthy expression of their feminine. There are not many people out there who have done that. There are a lot of women who I think have done that, and there's a lot of support out there for women honoring themselves and coming into their power. And I can think of, I would say many more women who have done that simply because there are more role models, there are more opportunities, and the feminine is encouraged. The feminine is devoted to right now in a way that the masculine, there's still a lot of suffering that needs to be acknowledged and worked through.
Absolutely. And, you know, working with men, I have discovered that men are I dare to say, like, men are more sensitive than we are. Like, their hearts, their emotions, they are very deep, and they were shamed for that. And then they grow up, and now they're in this other weird position where they're being shamed for their masculine, and they're so confused trying to figure out how to live in alignment with these two pieces. You know, and sometimes it's like, oh, now they're over cultivating the feminine because they don't want to be a jerk. Well, there's a lot of men that we see and that we work with, these nice guys, who they become really feminized because their masculine role model, their father usually, was just an ass. You know, they saw the football players at high school, or the guys at college who spoke so disgustingly about women, and they were like, I'm never going to be that guy. And that guy is strong and powerful and you know, activated and making things happen. So I'm just going to pull all my energy away from that so that I don't become that guy. And then they're in this really tough position of overcorrection. And now the women are like, well, you don't have any masculine energy, and so you're not sexy, and you're not like taking me. And so my heart just reaches out to the men, because this is a confusing time. It used to be really clear. To be a man, you did this, you acted this way, you said these things, you did this job. This is what you were if you were a man. And now men are expected to be and do so much more, and to be, you know, helping raising children and doing all of these different things, which maybe in the past would have been seen as more feminine, you know, things. And men are exploring their masculinity, their femininity, and their sexuality and their relation to gender in such a way that, oh, we just need to support them. We just need to support them and love them for this journey that they're on, for sure.
Yeah. And speaking in regards to the sexual energy, the sexual expression, there are so many men who are so afraid of what you were just talking about, where, you know, their fathers were definite representations of the shadow masculine, or they received a lot of influences in their youth or in their adolescence about the shadow masculine and the over sexualized, unhealthy, misogynistic expression of masculine sexual energy, that now they don't even touch it. It's just like, no, it's not safe for me to do that. It's not, you know, again, I want to be safe. I want to honor women. And so then, you know, can't even touch the sacral chakra, can't even touch the root chakra. So they're not even in their bodies. The overcorrection we see in women too. Think about executive women, for example, or, you know, anyone who works in corporate world. I would say most of my clients who I see this with are in corporate positions somehow, where they overcorrect to run their masculine in a really unhealthy way. They're working in an environment, again, going back to these societal expectations around masculine and feminine energy, they're working in an environment that pretty much only understands and values masculine intelligence and masculine energy. So they have to become a man energetically in order to survive in a corporate world. That is just as unhealthy. They shut down the emotional, intuitive parts of themselves. They shut down some of that creative energy. They shut down some of that sensitivity. They've got to, you know, tough it up and be the badass bitch in the office. Otherwise, and work so much harder to receive any of the respect and recognition and the pay. You know, there are all these issues around it, men and women in the workplace. But how does that affect them energetically? It means they shut down the expression, the full healthy expression of their feminine, meaning that they're not really healthy, grounded in their masculine either, right? Because you can't have one without the other. So if they're shutting down the feminine, any masculine energy that they're running is totally unsustainable, prone to adrenal fatigue.
Very prone to adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, prone to substance abuse, prone to, you know, like lack of sleeping, prone to depending on medication for regulating their body rhythms, ignoring what's going on in their body. Like, it's really unhealthy and unsustainable for the system, just as much for women who overcorrect to their masculine.
Yes. And, you know, often this can also happen because women have been abused and sexually have had, you know, like, we have to deal with some crazy stuff out there. So sometimes as a form of energetic protection from being, you know, sexually, you know, called out and molested and all of the things that we have to deal with, there are a lot of women who choose to shut off their femininity and just represent in a much more masculine way in order to feel safe in the world. Like, it's a protective force that we are utilizing. And then they have a hard time with relationships, a hard time connecting to men, a hard time trusting men. And, you know, it becomes such a difficult challenge in, you know, we see so many people who are so challenged by opening themselves up to relationship, and everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to have a relationship. And yet, you know, people are having to learn how to be in relationship. And you know, some of it does come down to this aspect of being imbalanced in the masculine and feminine.
Yeah. If you have a woman who's holding really, really strong masculine energy, there's not space for the man to show up in his masculine energy, or there's less space. And then, you know, people like interfering with each other and like, oh, you can't show up for me in this way, but you can't show up for me in this way. And then nobody can show up for each other sexually because we're, you know, they're both shut down. So it's, you know, it affects our relationships, it affects our family lives, it affects our professional lives, it affects our bodies, it affects our health and our well-being. So we've listed all these challenges of imbalance.
And all of this can happen also with, it doesn't matter if you're transgendered, if you're homosexual, if you're bisexual, like whatever your sexual orientation or experience, asexual, whatever it is, all of this applies to everybody.
Yeah. And even, yeah, that's a wonderful point. And the point is we must be balanced. Regardless, we have to be in balance. We have to be in balance of these hemispheres, our yin and our yang. And, you know, you can call it that if you'd rather than masculine and feminine, if that seems a little bit polarizing to you, your yin and yang energies. This is a fundamental part of how does duality express itself in the singularity of our form. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious, Kat, like, do you want to share any examples personally or professionally, like how we've talked a little bit about how we see this show up in our clients, but I'm kind of wondering, like, how are people working with this and how can we support each other and ourselves?
Well, you know, some tools that we, you know, we're always saying, I think it's every single episode, we're like, where do we start? It starts with self-awareness. Yeah. So once again, it starts with self-awareness, and it starts with really going in and looking at ourselves and looking at, like, what do we spend our time doing? What is the energy that we're running? How are we representing ourselves in the world? You know, how are we, you know, out there being seen in the world? And, you know, for myself, I know that I've had these sort of flows of energy throughout my life where I'm expressing certain kind of energy. I know that especially, so I was a very, very, very sensitive child, of course. And then in my 20s, I really did not allow a lot of expression of feminine energy. I'm never, like, I wouldn't wear I would never wear some kind of like flowy outfit or any kind of like that was just never ever gonna happen. You know, my femininity, it was like the expression, it would be like very sexualized, so very sexy. And then even in my sexuality, like my expression of sexuality, was actually very masculine. It was very like going out and finding somebody to have sex with, and then like, you know, like not really like laying back and allowing myself to receive sexually, but just like, you know, very masculine, energetic. And I know that I had to look at myself at different points and go, wow, that's really interesting. You know, what happens if I do start wearing these flowy skirts for a little while, and I start putting on jewelry, and I start like, you know, changing what I look like. I run a very masculine, strong energy a lot. So I my femininity needs to be cultivated. So I cultivate that through dance, through really awakening the Kundalini energy in my body and allowing that to move through singing, through receiving. I have a very beautiful masculine man who, you know, really encourages me into my feminine in a way that I've, you know, it's sometimes challenges me in the like, oh, just receive, just let yourself receive, just let yourself receive. And so all of those things allow me to kind of step into my feminine and do feminine practices,
Mm-hmm.
to be quiet, to do more like yin yoga style practice, and to cultivate that energy within myself. And then, you know, on the other hand, like doing very straightforward yoga, like, you know, it's like yoga it's like you're on a little rectangle, and you're like in the rectangle, and it's very like masculine. It's a very masculine, energetic. Like ecstatic dance is very feminine. So I actually cultivate a lot more of my femininity when I go into dance than if I'm doing yoga. It's very like, it's a very focused masculine, like this and then this and then this and then this. So I utilize those pieces to inform the energy that I'm needing for that day or that period of time or whatever it is, or going out into the moon and laying in the moon as opposed to going out and laying into the sun. Two different things.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, let's dive into a little bit, and I'll share some stories of what is the healthy expression of the balanced feminine and masculine. Kat, you actually reminded me of something when you were sharing your story, something I had completely forgotten about myself. When I was young, I would say like elementary school, middle school-ish age, I was so resistant, maybe also even in high school. I was so resistant to being in touch with my feminine nature. I would never wear skirts or dresses. Like I think when I was, I don't know, 9 years old, I wore overalls like every single day for a year with, you know, the t-shirts and things. And I was like, I want, you know, I'm a tomboy. And I was so against being seen as girly because in my mind, what I have no idea where I got this understanding, but my understanding was that femininity was equivalent with weak.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I have no idea where I got that. I mean, my mom is super strong, mega powerful witch woman. So like, you know, where did that come from? Unless it was like past life stuff or looking at, you know, movies, pop culture that I used to watch, like the Disney movies growing up. So maybe it came from that. But I was so against wanting to be saved. I didn't want anyone to save me. I wanted to figure it out myself. I wanted to do it by myself. And, you know, like, don't you dare call me a girl or say I do it like a girl. I can do that just as well as the boys. And I'm going to go be a tomboy in the woods. Thank you very much. So that was very much my experience from a young age because I had this idea that women were weak. And I felt a lot of shame around my femininity as I started, you know, like we go through adolescence, like, oh, I have boobs now. What? And so, you know, wear the baggy shirts and like, don't admit that I have any feminine characteristics. It took me a long time to wear makeup because there was this aspect also about feminine is weak, but it's also not safe in the world. And so it took me a very long time to come into the safety around, oh, it's okay to be feminine, and I can still be strong and be feminine, and I can be safe and be feminine. The way in which I was running my masculine at that time, I would say I was running my masculine more than my feminine, but that wasn't balanced either, because it was coming from a very defensive position of, again, oh, I'm not weak, so I'm going to be like over boyish, over tomboyish, which is a very defensive position to be in. It's the shadow masculine with the, I would say late teens ish. Again, still in that masculine of I wanted to be really smart and recognized for my intelligence. And I mean, I am really smart, but recognized again for these masculine qualities in school of my ability to write well and my ability to discern and memorize information. Again, the shadow masculine, not really supported with all of these deeply sensitive, I was a deeply sensitive person. My love of animals, that all came out in private. When I was by myself is when I allowed myself to express my feminine qualities, express my feminine nature, but I was ashamed of it. I would say I really began to be more balanced in both of these when I started embracing all of the wonderful things about the strength of my feminine nature. That, I think it's safe to say, is only happened within the last several years. I'm 29 years old, and it was probably not until my maybe mid-20s even that I really started recognizing, wow, I love wearing skirts. I love, being a woman, being feminine, and wow, exploring the goddess. I never even used to be able to say the word goddess. People talk about oh, the goddess, the feminine. I'm like, no, don't go there. But claiming my goddess nature was a huge deal for me, both in honoring the strength of my feminine lineage, but also understanding the strength and true nature of my masculine lineage. So again, it was only when I recognized how amazing and multifaceted and multidimensional my feminine was I actually able to access my masculine in a healthy way. So now I would say I have a really healthy balance of these two. Sometimes I overcorrect a little bit one way or the other, but in general, I bring a lot of masculine energy to the way that I run my business, in terms of I create programs and I have my brain working when I'm working with clients, etc. But I also hold a lot of yin space. I hold a deep nurturing container for that. And I take a lot of rest time to support myself, make sure that I can support my clients from a nurtured full cup. So it definitely takes the balance of the masculine and the feminine in order to be able to do that professionally. But I also exhibit that in my personal life, where I do the very much direct going out, doing all the things, with my half marathon. That's a very masculine practice for me. And I do plenty of the yin as well. I hold a lot of alone time and sit with my crystals and, talk to all my stones. I have all my stones, and I wear the beautiful dresses and the jewelry and the makeup and the things that help me feel in touch with my glorious goddess feminine nature.
Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how do they work together? Let's talk about that a little bit. What is the alchemy of masculine and feminine? How do they interrelate? We talked about this a little bit, actually. And I will share again something that came through in my channeling event a couple of years ago about balancing the divine masculine and feminine. The yin awareness is the fundamental awareness. It's the first thing. We tend to think of masculine as the first thing. It's not. The feminine must come first, because again, it's the I am. It's the who am I, what's going on internally, which then follows with the, okay, now what is out there? The masculine awareness. The masculine holds the container for the feminine energy. It doesn't mean that one is more important. It's just the way it goes. The masculine holds the container for the creative feminine to birth energy. That's one way that they relate to each other.
Mm-hmm. And just as you said at the beginning, that the masculine and the feminine are the first creations of from the separations from oneness. And so when we look at, like, if you look at the tree of life, if you're familiar with the diagram of the tree of life, basically at the top is the oneness, and then the oneness splits into two, and those two pillars that run down the sides of the tree of life, one of them is a masculine pillar and one of them is a feminine pillar. And as we are rising in consciousness from the base, from the earthly plane, and we're rising up through the tree of life, we're headed towards oneness, towards our full comprehension that we are with oneness, that we are the same as the oneness. And to do that, we must be in the balance between the masculine and the feminine, and learn how to hold both of those energies within our system, so that we can then actually merge into the oneness. And so when we think of it that way, and we think of all of the aspects of being that all of us have, and that we're going through and cultivating ourselves to cultivate all of these different ways that we have. We have beauty, and we have wisdom, and we have understanding, right? The masculine, it's like wisdom and understanding. And wisdom, it's like wisdom and understanding together are complete. It's that we're in this dance, and in the midst of dance, we're finding the center point. We're finding our center between the two, the rebalancing of everything. It's interesting and fascinating, even just the way that our bodies are formed, and how we're have this center line, and then we mirror the two halves of our body mirror each other. And so when we look at it from that really simplistic form, like, why would our bodies be structured this way? Because we are creatures that are in need of and rising toward even greater balance. And symmetry.
Yeah, I love that. I love thinking about that, where we embody both duality and singularity. So by honoring the duality, if we cut off one half of our duality, we have this, right? But this plus this equals wholeness, equals oneness and singularity. Same with extrapolating that out into relationship or a divine union. Again, this applies not only to heterosexual couples, but when we are whole in our masculine and feminine, and we unite with another who is whole in their masculine and feminine, we come into even more wholeness, and we together complete that, the movement from polarity, from separation into unity and balance.
Exactly. And one of the things that I work with my men on is learning how to cultivate and pull energy up from the earth, which is a feminine force, to nurture themselves with this energetic force, to store it in their bodies, and to come from this empowered place of, I am fully sourced from the feminine. I love the feminine. I forgive. I am grateful for this amazing earth that I have underneath my feet, who can feed me. And when a man can come from that place, then he's not grabbing onto women. He's not needing that feminine energy, because everybody needs both. Everybody needs masculine energy and feminine energy. And if you're not sourcing it from yourself, and so if you are feeling like you're not having enough feminine energy in your system to really dig in, root into the earth, and pull that energy, just breathe it up into the body and store it in the lower belly, in the dantian, the space between the front and the back of the body, right in the middle there. Then like you're storing feminine energy, and in that spot is where creativity is born. It's where you're, how you become a Renaissance person, right? Where you have lots of different creative flow of energy. And the same if we're needing to cultivate our masculine energy, really like putting our hands straight up and stretching our entire being up to the light, to the masculine force, and drawing and breathing that down into the body and pulling that into the body and letting that nurture us, then we're not so like needy. Oh, I need a man, I need this masculine energy so much in my life that we kind of chase people away. We become we're regenerative.
Mm-hmm.
We're generating the energy that we need to sustain ourselves, which is going to keep us going, and then meet somebody who's also doing that same work. And then those two beings coming together is very powerful and profound.
When we are whole and resourced, we can not only attract a partner who is whole and resourced, but we can model that healthy embodiment for others in the world. Going back to what we were speaking about with healthy role models, both of masculine and feminine energy, men and women, one of the purposes, the societal purposes for doing this work is to be one of those role models, be a healthy, grounded, okay, I run my masculine and my feminine in a really healthy, expansive way. So let's go back to some tools to wrap up. So tools for people, we already talked about awareness. Have a look at, how do I run my masculine energy? I make a list, which is a masculine quality in itself. Analyze, put your brain on it, and come up with a list of the ways. Okay, I run my masculine energy when when I do my work and I'm in my left brain. I run my masculine energy with when I'm communicating with clients, or whatever it is. Just go ahead and look at it and make a list of all the ways that you run your feminine energy. How are you grounding in your goddess self, your feminine self? What does your nurturing practice look like? What does your self-care practice look like? Do you take time to be alone? Do you take time in the darkness? What is your relationship to earth medicine, to animals in your lives? And go ahead and look at these. This can actually be really helpful to have a list where you look at both. Is one list way longer than the other? That might be an indicator right there. Or do you have kind of the same amount of things on the list, but one of them feels really good and healthy and embodied to you, and the other feels like you have to make yourself do it, or you don't spend a lot of time doing it, or you have kind of a wonky relationship to it? Have a look at that, because that can be really revealing to what is your personal relationship to masculine and feminine energy. Think also about your relationships with your parents. From the time you were a child, what was your father like? What was your mother like? What were your masculine and feminine role models like? And how does that inform your current relationship to the archetypes of masculine and feminine energy?
Yes, that's really an important one. We do this exercise with our men in our full day workshop around really making a list around what is a man and what is a woman, what are the characteristics. And you might be surprised at some of the characteristics that a man is this and a woman is this, both positive and negative, what you actually believe. And then if you have a bunch of negative beliefs about what a man is, it's really hard to run to raise your masculine energy. So if that's the case, and you do have a lot of negative feelings about women or about men, then that might be something that you need to reach out and get support on, doing some healing work on that, releasing these beliefs, releasing shame, releasing trauma, so that you can come more into alignment and actually be able to cultivate that energy.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And that, like I was sharing with my personal journey, I discovered that I didn't have a good relationship with women. I didn't have I believed that women were weak. And so then from finding that women can be strong, it helps not only my personal relationship with my own femininity, but that was reflected externally in how I cultivated relationships with embodied women. And I have the most amazing sister crew now that I didn't have for many years when I was younger. So that is a good start. I mean, that's a lot. That'll take you a while right there to go through all that work, but also be thinking about how can the work, and this is something I invite you to think about always, how is the work that we're doing personally extrapolating out into society as a whole? We talked a little bit about what's going on we didn't really even touch upon the political situation right now, but I think we can all agree it's like very shadow-y in general, shadow masculine. So the more we can live our internal balance, the more we can be grounded in healthy feminine, healthy masculine, healthy expression of both of these characteristics, the more we give other people permission to do the same, the more we inspire people to find that wholeness within themselves, and also offer ourselves as healthy, balanced role models for people who might not have ever had that growing up.
Mm-hmm. And especially for if you have children, right? Like it's your responsibility to be an expression of balance and self-love. Mm-hmm. And to, give them the opportunity to explore what these concepts mean to them. And, with just a lot of space and compassion and acceptance of whatever it is that they're going through and figuring out at these different phases of development and deciding about themselves, and not putting our own mind beliefs onto these young people who, the young people of today are living in a much more gender fluid experience, it seems, in a lot of cases, and they're making decisions about themselves and their expressions that, for us, we'd no space even close to that, to being allowed those things. So it's such a new and different world for, if you do have children, just allowing them to be what they are and to play within these realms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. And as always, you are absolutely welcome to reach out to us collectively or individually. We do have a wonderful package offering that you would get to work with both of us if you feel so inclined. Please do feel free to contact us through our email address, shamansistersessions@gmail.com, or through our Facebook page, Shaman Sister Sessions. You can also go on our YouTube channel by the same name and check out any of our past episodes. We have some really wonderful content. So please do feel free to reach out. We love to hear from you. Let us know what you want us to talk about. What has been plaguing your mind with questions? What would you love to hear the Shaman Sisters reflect on? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. And next week, actually, so before we take off, next week, we have a special guest coming on to speak with us, a medicine sister named Deshna, who is hosting a conference, a festival conference, actually, at which I am a speaker in May. So she will be coming on to join us in speaking about sacred community and social evolution.
Oh, so exciting.
Absolutely. So please join us next week for episode 21, Sacred Community and Social Evolution, which I think we can agree would all be a wonderful thing. So, thank you, Kat.
Thank you.